Good day, dear ladies and gentlemen. I'm Stanislav Naumov. I'll be the moderator for our discussion. Just now, at the opening plenary session, we got quite a good charge of ideas and about global processes, about the role of corporations. And that's why I think that the topic that the organizer of our session, the Eurasian Economic Commission, proposed to us to look what we get from the Eurasian economic integration for business to the countries which are members of this union and which is in line with the common track of Astana Economic Forum. And in order to save our time and to give a chance to you, participants who are present in this room, to ask questions to our respected speakers, I hope that you know who are the major experts for us today. And I pass the word to Galia Childebaeva, who on behalf of Eurasian Economic Commission will set up the topics for discussions. We don't have enough time, and being a moderator, I'll speed up and I'll try to connect all the statements. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm very happy to welcome everybody at our platform, the guests, participants, organizers, everybody. I want to thank everybody for the time which you share with us. We understand as of today that in the world, and today, as this, participants of the plenary session said, we are developing fastly at a high rate. We are moving, and nothing is stable and fixed. And we are moving towards improvement of things. At the same time, liberalization of the markets happens. Liberalization and integration try to improve the investment climate. And of course, at that, we try to decrease the costs for business, introduce the best practices. And I want to raise big two issues or two big questions, which are, as of today, are to be discussed and to discuss here at our platform. Number one, we all know that when we do have the spirit of competition, the countries which compete in this or that area, this work happens more effectively, more intensively through competition. You have looked at these ratings. We have taken all 5 members of the Union, Eurasian Economic Union, and we showed this picture. What I faced, and I know this work about the rating of the World Bank doing business. From every year on, we are working harder and harder, and you know that while being the representative of the state body of the Republic of Kazakhstan, of course, we strengthened this very position, and I think that these are the results of the previous work, which was conducted by the Ministry of National Economy and by the state holders in creation of the favorable conditions for business. And as of today, as I understand, Kazakhstan ranks 28, one of the leading states among the CIS countries, and we have achieved the goal to join 30 developed countries. This work can be told that starting from 2012, if we make a certain of going back, we see that the big breakthrough was done by the Russian Federation. In 2012, it was 128, and now where it is, huge work had to be done to make this breakthrough. And now we see, when we say that we need the spirit of competition, we raise quite a different issue. If the World Bank assesses the country, around 190 countries in terms of doing business rating. And while knowing that the integration processes of today are having a serious impact on the economies and on creation of favorable conditions for business as a whole, then why it's not to take up, to evaluate the evaluation of the integration processes, unities, in order for the competition to start. On this slide, you see the integration unions which are in place in all practically countries which are united in these integration processes to carry out huge work in regards to the economies. Why? In fact, doing business it shows positive effect in terms that when we improve the conditions for doing business, it happens on the basis of getting good practices and the attraction of good practices. When we develop the normative acts and try to create favorable conditions, it's not invented. You cannot invent a bike. It develops on the basis of what exists already, on the basis of the best practices. And in case when we have the integration union in after Mercosur, Eurasian Economic Union, the one which we are discussing, we of course can take the best practices from the integration unions. And now just look. If we take any of these integration unions and take the countries of doing business, we can see clearly that integration processes have a serious impact on the status of doing business in these or those countries. Why? Because the group of countries of Eurasian Economic Union and the others are stand one after each other. These are the impacts of integration process. But if you talk about the agreement about the union of the Eurasian Economic Union, we need to say that many postulates not to worsen the position of business since the moment of signing the agreement have been fixed in that agreement strictly, which is a major guarantee for our business for them to follow these provisions and the state bodies for them to deal more with the issues and more with implementation, harmonization of legislation according to this agreement on the creation of the union, which will create favorable conditions. And the other quite big issue, and we face it every day practically in our everyday life, it's protectionism. In regards to the issue, relation of protectionism and cooperation. Protectionism happens when the state bodies, in most cases, hold to their competences. And we think that it's evident when the negotiations, consultations happen, the issue is the issue is that we should maintain these competences or make them rigid is the issue. Every day when now when we have the union, every country has joined with its own legislation and with the legislation which regulates different levels of business, and we have to harmonize this. Legislation needs to harmonize to make everybody approximated to ensure single access to the market, and we face it in practice under the framework of the single market of services, which is one of the most important instruments which will give to business an opportunity to work on in one market, in one platform, where we should have equal conditions. But to create these conditions, first of all, we need to talk about the access to the market. And here we have to do a huge work. And here we have the issues of protectionist nature. I'm not scared to say so. But anyway, we are doing the job. Today, we have so many issues in terms of advocacy. We are working strongly and deeply with business. And I think that the colleagues, and I hope my colleagues will confirm, representatives of business, all the documents which are adopted by the Commission, they are discussed. They go through the public discussions. All the reprimands, comments of business are taken into account. 92% of comments by business are taken into account in our documents. This is a format which I would propose to you, and I would like to listen to the position of our dear respected colleagues. Galia, thank you. Today, Mrs. Lagarde said, and she said that this ribbon is not for speech of women, and we have mics not only for women but for men too, who will speak up. But first of all, I request you to continue with the analysis, because The external view helps and gives us a certain expertise. Is it true that while working as a representative for the Central Asian region, but I know that you actively participate in the integration projects, you see the connection which has been described by Galia, and how integration practices help to grow the countries in ratings. Why not to make such index for different macro-regional groups? Thank you, Stanislav. I am very happy to be at this forum, and it's my first visit. My first visit to Astana was in the 2008, 11 years ago, when we started to work with the World Bank to improve the rating doing business. And I know quite well this rating. I worked for long with this. And I worked with Galia Jaldabaeva. I have been engaged with this for many years. And now she's in Moscow. She is engaged in integration. But I want to say that my understanding is as follows. Uh, Again, doing business is a limited index. It's not measure everything, and we heard about it at the plenary session. There are so many things about trade integration which are where only one of 10 indicators is indicator of international trade. As we know, the integration block is first and foremost is integration for services, goods, for capital flow, free movement of people, and human resources. Maybe in the future, the world organizations have the index or the system for assessment of the integration unions. I don't know about it, but I think that from my point of view and based on what I know, because I lived for 3 years in Kazakhstan, each of these 5 countries made its own steps to improve doing business, and in reference to other indexes which we have seen. That is why, yes, a huge breakthrough happened, especially for Kazakhstan, for the Russian Federation, which is among the 30 years doing business in terms of doing business rating. But I think that the Eurasian integration supported, but is not the key factor. And as soon as the Eurasian integration is a new process, and the union functions only for 5 years, and it's too early to say that we see this breakthrough happened only thanks to integration. But from the other point of view, Mercosur was shown, EU was shown. I am a citizen of Bulgaria, and I know that through the membership to EU, there are so many factors which have an impact on doing business, and many, and there is a big list of all these conditions to do business, which are above doing business and above us indicators. In other regions, Mercosur, I cannot make a comment, but I worked in Washington in Latin America. But I think Mercosur is not the best example for the economic integration, specifically for the countries like Argentina. If you look at the trade relations of Argentina with other countries of the world, they didn't get the good results from its membership in Mercosur. I'll stop with this. But this is my first reaction. I'm not waiting for Constance in the first minutes of the discussion, but I want to ask you, Stefka, she was very reserved, but in the mandate of the Bank of Development, the idea was fixed of the total life cycle starting from the time of birth up to the selling business. And you are, as investment bankers, you understand to what extent investment credits, which you have already provided to dozens of projects, to what extent they are conditioned by the progress which Galia mentioned, and she showed 10 parameters of the very important regulatory aspects. Thank you, Stanislav. As for Eurasian Bank of Development as an institute, formally the bank is not the institute of Eurasian Economic Union, but in fact, emissions and goals and the mandate of the bank are in line with all these global objectives, and by de facto, we represent the interests of business and of business space, and for members of the EIS. As for the efforts of Eurasian Economic Commission in terms of integration between the countries, it exists already for 5 years functioning, and there is a serious and positive dynamics which is observed in terms of application and the application of tariffs and approaches, single approaches to tariffs and markets, the logistical component, the quality of it has increased quite considerably. For me, the most important thing is that the participating countries are in principle ready to compromise, ready to discuss in a constructive manner, to discuss the problem areas, to synchronize the legislation which is existing as of today, but you cannot do everything at once. 5 years, of course, it's a long time, but no, it's not a too long time. As for the portfolio of the Eurasian Bank for Development, the shareholders set up certain tasks to us, objectives, as everybody. In our strategy, it's written that in our portfolio, we must have the not less than 50% of integration-related projects. We are above this indicators. We have around 60%, which is in fact the thing which we can boast of here. But as for the integration issues, nobody can tell you better than Galia about it, but I want to state one more moment. You know that within the last 10 years, we have tendencies to deviate from our potential clients. Among our potential clients from hard currency, from euro and dollars, except for exporters. The people who have the export revenues, of course, they don't pay attention to so much on the kind of the currency, but it's a very significant trend, which is palpable, which is visible, and you see that clients in Kazakhstan come and ask for resources in tenge. In the Russian Federation, clients ask for the Russian ruble. Yes, which speaks for about so much for itself. And such moments must be taken into account. Of course, we cannot make and give any recommendations, but yet we need to pay attention to it because it can have a direct impact on the monetary policy and crediting policy. And that's why I think that this moment is very important. Thank you. Anyway, we do certain notes, write down certain notes, because we need to make recommendations at the end of the discussion. I'm sure that the department will use the view of experts. But in our discussion, I am not only a moderator, but jointly with Ibrahim and Bolgert, I represent the Business Council, and I hope in the second part of our discussion we shall have an attacking position. But I want to ask Oleg Gashansky, based on his experience of working in Russia, in CIS for several years, you have consulted so many projects. Please try to go on and go on to talk openly, and to what extent business feels the advantages which are declared by the Eurasian economic process, and what you would recommend practically to Evgeny, Daniil, and others. Thank you very much. The company KPMG and the region which I represent works in 9 countries of the post-Soviet spacehood, in 5 countries which are included in the Eurasian Economic Union, business looks away. It would be possible to earn revenues, money in a safe manner. Business is a pragmatic thing, and you cannot deceive it neither by declaration nor by any calls. On the one hand, we see that in all countries which are members, there is improvement with doing business rating. Russia has made a breakthrough, as it has been stated today, but is there any other criteria? They are like direct investments to the countries, saldo of the capital flow, is it comes to the country or flows out of the country, and how business is ready to pay money for consultations to use this or that education. Do you pay, and do they pay much to you? Have you earned anything? No, nobody asked us to do it. But anyway, to be serious, so far, not a single request from business in terms of how we should structure, how to advise, and what are the advantages of this union. We are not lucky. So far, we didn't have anything like that. But I wouldn't dramatize the situation trying to dramatize. Why? And we shouldn't do it. Why? Because it's a new formation. If you look at the EU, ASEAN countries, the way which they did from free movement through the customs union to the economic communities, they pass through the decades of years. But we have only a couple of years since its formation. There are subjective factors for this union. The country which is dominating here is Russia. It has around 87% of the GDP, total GDP, 85% of the population, and it's then comes Kazakhstan with 10% of GDP, 10% of the population. Other countries, the rest of three, they don't have much, of course. The country dominant is Russia, which is obvious. And if you compare with ASEAN, EU, there is no such a thing. They are Germany, UK, France, and they give 63% of GDP, around 55% of the population. Absolutely well-balanced figures, composition. And then about the internal turnover in the countries, in the blocks. As of today, if you look at the EU, 65% of the turnover of the states, it's through the internal turnover. As for as for us, only 15% falls on trade with each other, including transit of energy resources through Belarus, Kazakhstan to China, transit. And the final buyer is a country which is a participant of the bloc. Anyway, the level of protectionism today internally in the union is quite high. A huge number of non-tariff related barriers, a huge number of licenses are required, and around three preferable goods. There are bilateral disputes about milk between Russia and Belarus, between Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, about meat. The level of protectionism internally in the bloc is higher than we would like it to be. And we are talking again about business. We think that business is the grass which grows everywhere through the pavement despite of the geopolicy. And where do we see the principal difference of the of our bloc from its a low share of small and medium business? If you look at GDP, which falls on the small and medium business, it's less than 30%. 30% are engaged in the sector by legal entities. It's around 90%. If you look at the old Europe, the figures are around 65% from fall on small medium process. Efficiency of production, anyway, production and labor production in our countries is less than in Europe and US. And that is why we must create conditions for business, for small, medium business, first and foremost, and starting from the measures like access, equal access to the markets, participation in state procurement administration, reasonable for small, medium business, preferences, access to loans, which is a business, and without loans, SMEs will die. And the improving image of entrepreneurs. Historically, also post-Soviet Union countries, businessmen they were punished for doing business in our countries, and they were punished. And culture of business and image of businessmen, which creates small and medium business, it does not exist. And that's why there should be a complex a set of measures to support small, medium business, demonopolization. And we shouldn't neglect it, which will help us in different things, like taking off barriers to increase the turnover in the countries of our union, and will take the level of doing business and attractiveness of our countries to a higher level. Thank you, Oleg. Daniil, you have a unique experience of work in the national ministry, and you participated maybe in all procedures in relation to ratings, and you worked as a minister of the Eurasian Economic Commission. You now are the head of the Kyrgyzstan Union of Manufacturers and Entrepreneurs. What about protectionism in your country? Do you use your skills in order to protect entrepreneurs? And do you not suffer from controversies when you understand what is a national regulation and what else could be done? What else could you recommend to do? Thank you very much, Stanislav. In fact, it's very pleasant that there are so many people who are protecting business, and they want to help two of us to develop. But I want to say, as soon as I was requested by you, Stanislav, to speak up openly, not like an ex-civil servant, but as a person who now has devoted all his time to structure, to adapt in some way, to push forward the development of business, not only in my country, but also in the Business Council of Eurasian Economic Union. From this point of view, I want to say not much time has passed, of course, and not 2 years, of course, and even not 5 years. We all know. And I also worked as an integrator in the past, but I know that this process didn't start in the year 2010, not in 2011, when the norms and rules of the customs unions were endorsed and enforced when Kazakhstan opened the borders, tax borders, and when we had the union. And the union had the task to build up relations, to build the mechanisms which would be enough for business, not to the state or officials, but in particular, business could give the surplus, the profit, which will be distributed in the country and the framework of the trans-boundary activities and for development. This process started from the moment of creation of CIS when we joined the zone of free trading. We had quite enough time to get adapted in the way that we are saying now, to implement everything in life. With all my respect to the processes, in fact, when we talk about the background of this history, the Eurasian Economic Union is, in fact, in terms of rapidness of passing from the free movement of goods to the freedom of flow of services, goods, finance, human resources, labor resources, and single policies for different sectors of the economy. We are going very fastly, it's true, but the results that we get are not enough for business. In order to be evaluated correctly, in order for us to say that the process goes on and it goes on well, maybe it's enough. And there is a topic, there is a material to talk about it. Talking about business and concrete things, we see that we have started from freedom of tax freeze and free flow of circulation of goods. Where is it? We know that there are tariff barriers. We know about the measures which are of protectionist nature, which are carried out by this or that country in terms of certain limitations, in terms of quantity, and building up certain tariff barriers for these or those goods to enter or not to go out of the country. We don't have the market in the pharmaceutical market so far, but we declared that it would happen already in the year 2016. We don't have the free flow of oil derivatives. We have planned it for till 2025, but we have not started to do it. We are still sitting on quotas, which don't give us only the chance to use them for consumption, but not for development, not for processing, not for the economies of our countries to develop. We just say that this or that country consumes this much, and this should be the quota. I think it's not good. It's not correct. We say that our countries, in fact, in the global world, have quite a high starting point in competitions. These are the first places by oil and gas, metallurgy. We're ranking number one. I'm not talking about agriculture. I'm not talking about land resources where we rank number one, two worldwide. Where do we implement? Where is cooperation? Where is realization which we declare so often? As for the free flow of services. Where is it? In the 43 sectors, they are not implemented. We don't have acknowledgement, full acknowledgement. If you get certain permissions in the national bodies, how is it implemented in other countries? So yes, we say that there are norms. These are the guarantees which are in papers, which are described, which are painted. They were well developed. I also participated in it. I know how hard we worked when we got together and developed them. But as for implementation itself, it doesn't exist to the full extent. But I am not talking about the financial circulation. And talking about creation of the institutes by the year 2025, we are not talking. We don't understand what we are talking about when we're talking about getting the loans and credits, as one of the speakers said, to get them in national currency. It's a good indicator, but it's not an indicator in terms of the supranational level. But if we had mutual settlements between each other, how should we calculate them, to link them to dollar? This issue has not been solved until now. In the year 2012, the electrical power, which had in the Soviet Union huge potential when we didn't have to build additional communications, we haven't come to the mechanism when the access to monopolies and the mechanisms themselves of access to them. How, for instance, business from this country can come from to St. Petersburg exchanges, so can participate in these mechanisms, which is not worsening, and it's not a threat to the to certain country presidency, but it could become a big driver for growth for all of us. But I could to talk so much and to talk about the positive things, but speakers said a lot of good things and very useful things, but the most important thing, give the floor. Is the word to business. Yes, we always remember the last words, and I hope you will make a speech about the positive things. We have a round table. We don't have a table around which we sit together, but when we generally give the floor to a representative of the hosting party, and we, in this case, we're in Kazakhstan, if we give the floor to Evgeny, don't take it as the invitation to to live. Evgeny represents the unique institution which is deeply integrated in the national system on decision-taking in terms of regulation of business of 5 countries, is the best well thought of institution in dialogue with the business and other parties concerned. Nobody participates so actively in different types of discussions as the platform of Eurasian ESA, and they express their point of view about the assessment of the regulation and etc. Evgeny, how is this balance between advantages which are provided in terms of, for instance, accession to the external markets? We talked about it. As for the external markets, countries understand each other. Everybody welcomes liberalization. Everybody says, oh, it's good. Even Argentina says that it's good that I can do everything myself. As for the common market, I think that it so far has not developed, and 180 million people which are considered to be resources. With this resource, can SMEs work with 180 million consumers? Only big corporations can do it, of course. And what is the experience of Kazakhstan in this respect? Thank you very much, Stanislav. Honest, luckily or not, I don't have this experience, but I can use my experience as the head of the private company. So, but I can talk about two major issues about success in terms of conditions on doing business, and second, barriers. I think, and we know that after each improvement of this or that indicator of the rating, we have a huge work behind it, which is linked with involvement of business, decision-making, with consultations. And this work is being done by the National Chamber, with the national ministries, and we do this work on a regular basis. But what I want to say, the success of each country's participants of our economic union, yeah, I don't think we should summarize them. And instead of competition of between jurisdictions, it's better to move to the use of advantages of each of these jurisdictions. Why? So that we can solve two tasks. Number one, to get access to expert and development of fair competition for fighting against counterfeiting with negative things, which we do have in the common market. But if we come back to the title of our today's session, it's all means potential opportunities for business. But if we look at just dry figures, $19 billion of turnover of Kazakhstan with the countries of Eurasian Economic Commission for 10% of growth versus 2017. But what is behind these figures? We watch the situation which is evolutionary and logistically well-grounded, shifting from diversified import to the Republic of Kazakhstan and shifting to import mostly to the import from the countries of Eurasian Economic Union. And that is why the question arises every time when we talk about the topic, when we talk about protectionism. If in the past we had some choice, but now we have only relations with one or two big partners in the union, which makes your position not strong, not always strong. But the plus in this, as we see it, for instance, if we look at the case with the sugar, when we try to understand the situation, without talking about protectionism, we just looked into this case, the history, the situation which developed in the market, and we see that for 95% of import, it falls only on the Russian Federation and on the Republic of Belarus. And this movement goes in terms of development of cooperation, mutual trade. But with cooperation, not everything is ideal. Again, there is a good initiative to develop the Eurasian network of industrial cooperation. And it has a big name, but the logics is in the following, in the supply chain and in building up the supply of chain. But so far, we don't see any real working chains, supply chains or production technological chains with involvement of subjects from several countries. It's just starting. And we think that this is a priority and an opportunity, and it will give to us the advantage when we go to the export markets if we, at the supranational level, can correctly formulate the format of the jointly produced product or some integration projects, perspective ones, as they are called nowadays, but it means that they must be more uh, advantageous and beneficial to business rather than the cooperation, which is possible. Nobody prohibits this to happen, but if we want to move to the jointly produced products, then business must be explained. What are the advantages to business? And then maybe we shall give certain impulse to develop cooperation between us. And with your permission, I don't know whether you will give me the floor now or not, but let me talk about it right now. If we look at the dynamics of protectionism, about how we fulfill decisions or declare certain things, in spite of all the pluses and simplifications, there is a huge number of, or big number of problems and bottlenecks in trade. And your colleagues quite recently published a regular report about barriers, and they were fixed, and there are 71. There are 71 barriers, but 2 years ago there were 60. But we're allowed to disclose all these crimes. Yes, the competences of specialists improve. But if you look at the backside of these figures, then it's obvious that there is a very low dynamics to solve the issue of these barriers. Although we know them, they are visible, but and there is a dynamics that they will increase. Maybe it's related to the fact that the trades turnover increasing, and there are new moments which show up. Only 5 years of the integration union, of course, it's also matters so much. But I think that in order to solve all these issues with the barriers, bottlenecks, as a more active role could be played here by the platform of the Business Council. Quite often we spend so much time at different platforms of the Eurasian Economic Commission, with all my respect to it, but the less frequently we meet in the format of B2B in the Business Council. And then when we try to develop the consolidated position of business, we cannot do it. And I think that maybe it's because we stopped to communicate more frequently. And a big topic of transport, I'm not going to develop it, but I want to say that the transit potential of development of common transport corridors, certain agreement in development of the transport logistical infrastructure will give it will give a huge effect, and there is good potential at the regional border level, at the level of the common market, And we are waiting that we are waiting for the digital transport corridors to happen, to be implemented, but now it's not clear to us. We invited the colleagues who developed this concept to our national chamber. We are still waiting for them. We want to discuss this issue with them. Thank you. Thank you, Evgeny. I think that there will be a chance to continue with this audit of different sides of integration, and I'm sure that we have maybe the representatives of subdivisions of the Eurasian Economic Commission. If you have come to Nur-Sultan, we can arrange such consultations. But before uh, we go on with exchange of views, I want to give the floor to the representatives of Armenia. If you think that you can add something to what has been described by Daniel Evgenian, please don't be shy. We shall give you a chance to talk, to speak up. And now I want to ask the organizers to come back to this web, which was prepaid by Gania. Show them, because it was very interesting. Well, they're trying to find that uh, slide. The less it is, the better the regime is. I have seen these materials beforehand, and I found out, like in Anna Karenina of Tolstoy, that all families are unhappy in their ways. These webs, the picture webs of different of 5 countries, are not similar. But Evgeny said that if we want to scale up something, Kyrgyzstan has quite a clear and understandable situation. You can look at what you have managed to do. You managed to liberalize these procedures if we have the correct understanding. That is why a question to the respected experts, to the colleagues, to Stefka Mangilde, what would you recommend at the level 1, 2? What at the national level of the national regulation uh, it's better to attention to, based on what Galia said, in order to get the integration effect, or what Evgeny said, that there should be some integration priority for business, for the residents of these 5 jurisdictions. What needs to be done, firstly, and secondly, and so I saw that you responded to it. Amangilde, Oleg, please. Yes, correct. It's correct. I think that from the point of view of non-tariff barriers, there is so many things to do. In the World Bank, we work on the trade facilitation, how to improve, how to cancel all non-tariff, phytosanitary, technical, and other regulations which are a barrier to business. That is why competition is an issue. For me, in any integration process, uh, the most important thing is to really give freedom to trade of services and trade. Galia has already mentioned about it. But I have a question. For instance, if I have a construction company, it was registered in Kazakhstan, has a right to work in Kazakhstan, will it be able to go and participate in projects in the Russian Federation, in any of these 5 countries? I don't know about it. I'm just asking a question. Uh, we know that there are the companies with the EU jurisdictions, if they work in 2 countries, they have this. The Slovenian company can be registered for public procurement and build a school, whatever, in Bulgaria or in Spain or in Germany. What else I want to add? I looked at the data. US only amounts to 2% from the global economy. This is a union of 180 million of people, which is a huge trade zone and huge opportunities for small, medium, and even big business. But it's a small player by its, if you take it by itself, until now even. And in order to improve its significance, and as Evgeny said, jointly to move forward and to try to find access to expert as a union, you must do and do something with your business climate to improve it, to simplify competition, so that there would be no protectionism and innovations. Yes, I have seen in your materials that you pay attention to it. You talk about the role and the significance of agreement about the zones of free trade. Then a question. Maybe the regime that we are using when concluding preferential, non-preferential agreements about free trade, maybe we should put them in line with these barriers because we create one regime for Vietnam, for Serbia quite a different, but in our country we have a third set of requirements. It's strange, of course. But the most important thing for the Eurasian Economic Union is to create free trade relations with the big players. With the big players, yeah, so maybe with some other countries of the world, for instance, with China. China is a big player, and then you have a big trading partner, EU. And I understand geopolitically, maybe it's impossible even to think about it because of sanctions, because of what it goes on. But everything is changeable. What is happening now in 5, 10 years can be different. And that is why it will be very important for the future development of the Eurasian Economic Union. Today, the Prime Minister of Georgia, he said that Georgia has agreement with China and EU. There are good positive examples, and I want to ask you, Daniel, while making a comment about the possibility to get loans and credits in the national currency, he said they want to understand whether it's not linked to something universal. And then what would be the risk? What are the instruments of the European Bank? No, let me. Maybe you will ask a question instead of me. Thank you very much. I am not such a wonderful moderator as you are, but the issue is not in finding one single currency. This is the issue of other steps. It is not on the agenda so far, but we're talking about what mechanisms and what needs to be done by the countries in the integration process in order for the financial relations and settlements to happen in the national currency, because otherwise we link it to the hard currency. Anyway, thank you. Thank you that you don't make to be responsible to be to talk about the single currency because it's a disputable issue. No, we are not talking about it at all. Anyway, thank you. I thank you that you don't ask me this question. But then I'll try to answer your question, Stanislav, and then Daniel ask a question. I want to ask a question to the question and to formulate my question to the questions which were asked. Is it worthwhile to speed up certain processes if the population, independent of the format of the business, whether it's big or small, if they're mentally not ready, not prepared, and there are rules in management, or everybody votes for changes until the changes will have an impact on them. And we need to understand that at first, through such associations as Atomican Business Council, through their platforms to talk, discuss these methods with the representatives of business, but not always to meet their requirements. We need to try to find the balance of interest so that everybody who is involved in these processes would understand everything equally. Otherwise, there would be no success. This rule works everywhere, irrespective where it is used. It's number one. And that is why the other question arises, need we speed up anything? Maybe it's better to agree upon certain unification in terms of terminology or whatever. Now the next. It's just a remark which I have heard. Maybe I misunderstood this remark, but yet it was said by Daniel that certain things are not fulfilled, that we have already foreseen in certain programs and projects, roadmap, and whatever things, certain activities were already fixed and the deadlines, but they were not fulfilled. We can say maybe you planned not well, badly. Maybe you gave the deadlines which cannot be fulfilled. I don't want to reprimand anybody. Maybe it was a bad plan, or maybe fulfillment was not good. There was no other thing. The most important thing is planning. Maybe it's better to look at the process of planning itself, but not at the plan. As for the calculations in national currency, let me do a bit of advertising. Last year, we introduced settlement clearing servicing, and now we do direct pays Kazakhstani tenge, Russian ruble. Now, approbation of the Belarusian ruble and tenge. Such opportunities exist. Technically, we have a software for it. Without accession to SWIFT, without linkage to dollar, we can do it. And there are clients who need it. And maybe it's better to ask this question. Maybe I better to ask this question: why we do not do it quite well, and we don't make the clients aware about this opportunity? And I would request, dear colleagues, if it's possible, please talk about it, because this is an instrument which will be useful to everybody, to every businessman. We shall write to Trump in his Twitter. Amankelde, he asked two questions, and I want to express your expert view. Help me, please. For instance, if we don't have a single view, are we doing planning correctly without considering the view of common consumers, which hypothetically can feel the advantages of integration? And do you see any compromise between what Daniel said, that maybe something was promised and it wasn't done? Maybe it's better not to promise anything. And as a moderator, and maybe the colleagues from the audience will also join me, can we have always equal positions for all 5 countries? Maybe the art of compromise is not to have coincidence of views, but to see the differences in terms of regulations and the different other things, and to try to find the new roadmaps. Yes, these 5 participants of the process can never have common views. There are objective realities. One of the 5 is the biggest versus the others, and it's a specifics. And unfortunately, The geopolicy also impacts the economy, and here we have certain relations with the external world beyond the Eurasian Economic Union, and of course, relationship with U.S., European Union, Western countries with China, relation of Russia with China. They also have its impact and are a factor for behavior of Russia in relation to these issues. And anyway, movement, iterations, and actions taken by Russia due to these geopolitical factors, they also have an impact on other participants of the uh, union. Not all of them can have competitive advantage, but we can find the compromise through the dialogue. There is no other way. As for planning and to do it better, it can be done, of course, but I'm talking about business because we always look at business, and for us, business is the end user, and it's a litmus which shows which is good and what is good, what is good in terms of cancellation of tariff. Privileges and no other. Through dialogue with business, through good qualitative dialogue with business and with each other, we can solve this issue. And I want to ask to your question, which you asked about one, two. It's good. We have done a lot in KPMG in terms of analysis and the dialogue about needs of SMEs. There are so many things, but if to do it quickly, there should be a impartial judicial system. It's number one, and number two, guarantee of the private property. Without it, we cannot dream about the improvement of the business climate for SMEs and big and very big business. No, we cannot talk about it. Thank you. We are coming to the final part, and I want to ask our dear representatives from the audience, do you have any questions? You can ask them right now. We have a mic. Just introduce yourself. And just, Piskarov Vladimir, good day. You know, I think that our today's session, which goes on here in this room, is one of the major sessions because the forum is being done for business. Thanks a lot to organizers that you invite us. We have an honor to be consulted by you, which is so important. These are the most serious issues. When something goes bad for business, it goes somewhere. In the past, they would go to the Communist Party to complain, but now we understand that they understand there is no Communist Party. They went to Turkey, but now we go to the Eurasian Economic Commission, and I myself faced that such problems. I didn't believe that the Commission will be an operating body. I thought that it would be a bureaucratic body, but we see that it works. It works with good results. There is criticism that they are not working correctly. I think that they are working correctly. The problems that we discussed with the Commission were solved. But anyway, internal national regulators hinder and I believe they work. And at some time we asked other sabotaging people there sitting. You go to the commission and you complain, and so help us, protect us. It's a paradox. It's strange, but anyway, the issues are being solved, and that's why I want to thank the Eurasian Economic Commission that we are doing work and quite well. And second, that we are going to support you, and thank you very much. And I want maybe altogether we must request the national regulators to ask them to strive to come back to the Eurasian Union, which we need, especially business needs it. As the position from EU is that it's a small union, you are only 180 million. I want to respond. We have the best belly and the best missiles in the world. Thank you very much. Yes, I support, and while supporting these words, I am not opposing to what has been said, but not only residents residents compete between each other, not brands compete between each other, but resident countries are already starting to compete because, in fact, quality of products can be comparable if you take into account robotization and other factors. But based on what has been said, that the best factor is when we get together at a forum, when we discuss such issues, but when the enterprise in our country will compete, when the enterprises will compete, they want to have other factors in their countries like protectionism and to make life difficult to other companies from other countries. And I want to say that the major factor for us to come to the moments when there is an agreement, when there is a planning, when there are roadmaps, but we don't have overcoming of protectionism. For this, we need, as I think, and we all understand, yes, if there are four wheels, we need the fifth. One body wants a square form of shape of it, the other round shape, but we say that integration and freedom in this or that area, this practice already exists, but there are certain specificities, and the Commission must work over this, and they do it. But implementation of these freedoms would be full but when you don't reach the total integration, it's bad. This is your idea about transport corridors is a certain magnet which will ensure certain frequency for everything to happen. I want you to make a comment on the thesis related to diversification of the import basket. In Kazakhstan, they have a good dialogue with biggest transnational companies, and they feel here quite comfortable. It is good because it's a technological dialogue, because it ensures transfer of innovations. Don't you have certain concerns that while we're waiting for a certain political consensus, there would be nothing to share? The transnational companies will share everything forever. I cannot answer this question fully, but I can share certain thoughts. Our correlation with the big transnational companies goes on an everyday basis. If we take the oil and gas sector, the sector of extraction and other sectors where such big players work and function, we have a dialogue with them about development of the local content. It supports the local manufacturers at the cost of high standards, which these big companies have. We develop the local business, and it must develop. And in this, we see positive things. The positive dynamics is visible. The dialogue is happening. We have the sector of oil services, which grows. It becomes active. We have companies which already today propose quite competitive services. And we all even have some success stories where our companies work. So this is in fact SMEs. Yes, these are SMEs. They work already abroad in big oil gas projects. It happened thanks to the close cooperation and very complicated voyage which was done to increase the standards, quality of their products through the participation of big players in the market of Kazakhstan. And I don't think that's here. We have a certain dissonance in economic integration or no, controversially, it facilities on the com competition. But there are some other factors which hinder. Uh, Somebody had this question, Steph asked a question about whether, for instance, can a construction company come from any other country and participate in different state procurements in a neighboring country? But we have so many cases when, unfortunately, at the local level, municipal level, they invent additional excessive requirements which are not declared, which have never been foreseen anywhere. But it all complicates or makes impossible for other countries to participate, competitors from other countries. And we have to work over this because on top of that, a number of colleagues appeal and get a good feedback from the Eurasian Economic Commission. Uh, uh, but when I said that we spend so much time in the platform of EC, I didn't criticize. It talks about the openness, normal, constructive position, on behalf of the heads of the divisions of the Commission. Without it, it would be so difficult for us to work. But unfortunately, there are positive things, but there are minor negative things which undermine everything. Oleg, I found one client for you. It's an oil servicing company in Kazakhstan. Uh, they they also want to work in the single market. Galia, I have a proposal. Alman Gilde today was very careful in his speech, but they have 100 borrowers, more than 100 borrowers. Your idea to make your own index of the integration economy, it can be used as a pilot. We can take this 100 borrowers and we can interview them and ask whether the national, supranational regulation is improving and about the methodologies. The final floor is given to you. Thank you, Vladislav. In fact, we have deviated from the issue of competition, but I want again to talk about it. As Evgeny said, the key moment in competition and in all these competitive measures is application of the best practices. And I have mentioned and I have said about that in any case, any economy is not built on the grass, and we are not inventing bikes. We are taking the best things which already exist. And this is a format which we have already discussed. But now I don't want to focus your attention on the ratings. It's something supportive as an instrument to create favorable conditions for business, but to talk about the format. And thank you to you, because you talked so well about EC activities. But it's so difficult when we have certain barriers and bottlenecks in our work. For the first time, at the level of the national legislation, the rules for regulation of facilities and the activities were done. This is the document which made it possible that the national legislation will try to create the single rules for how business, the business of 5 countries could work on a single platform to come to the market and work. The rules exist for 2 years. You know about them. And in a week, at the Supreme meeting, we'll talk about how these rules work. But unfortunately, there are tendencies that not all the rules which are fixed, stipulated, are implemented. They are not following all these rules of the national legislation. There are 3 key moments which we think could help to do this work. Number 1, implementation, and we are raising this issue. The rules of the single market must be created at the level of the national legislation also. If we create the supranational legislation, but the norms of the supranational legislation are not implemented in the national legislation, it's difficult to work with this because it's interpretation and application of the norms in practice. But when these norms are implemented in the national legislation, we shall have single interpretation, application, it will be granted. Number two, harmonization. We do a lot of efforts to harmonize the national legislation based on the format of approximation of the conditions, which we do have as of today. And I always say and reiterate that all the work that we do, it's about approximation because we are having different starting points between our countries. And this format of our work, and we always talk about it at our platforms, is administrative cooperation. We today try to do huge work with the state bodies so that the sectors where regulators of 5 countries work, they could cooperate between each other. And this is success of all our work. And if the regulator will look in one direction and do the simple things, then I think business will only benefit from it. Thank you very much. If we do have the representatives of the national bodies, state bodies, applaud us, and now everybody will applaud us. Applause to the moderator.